who's at fault for supply chain delays? Maybe not just the Suez Canal. My guest today is Alex Wakefield. He is CEO of Longbow Advantage. Hello, Alex. How you doing?
Great, Bob. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for taking the time with me. I really appreciate it. So let's talk warehouses, because there's problems in warehouses that are also causing problems in the supply chain, and maybe even a more serious factor than the temporarily blocked Suez Canal. What is the role, in your opinion, of warehouses today in ensuring the supply chains run smoothly and efficiently?
Yeah, so we have a view that the warehouse or distribution center is really the heart of supply chain, kind of the beating heart that pumps all the product out into the circulation of supply chain. So having any impact into the warehouse is much more significant than any other area of supply chain. Mm-hmm. So what we see is that really the strategic location and how you do process your fulfillment process is really going to lead to a huge advantage, and customers are demanding more and more. With a heightened awareness of COVID and e-commerce, customers are demanding more and more quick turn, last mile, really close distribution centers, and warehouse processing technology enables all of that. So there's a huge component for warehousing in the impacts to supply chain and in really increasing your revenue and customer service.
So currently, though, what are some of the inefficiencies we're seeing in warehouses that are slowing down and hampering the flow of product throughout global supply chains?
Yeah, so I think a few of the key inefficiencies that we see are, number one, labor. Access to labor is very difficult. Hiring, training, retaining labor, given current environment, whether people are scared because of COVID and proximity, or whether they're incented not really to sign up for work. So labor is a big problem. Really also seeing inventory visibility and accuracy. So visibility into what's in your warehouses compared to maybe your order management system or even inventory master and ERP, reconciling those systems is challenging, because what's in your warehouse and really what's in your WMS from an inventory perspective is really what you have. So it's important to have good visibility into inventory accuracy. And then lack of real-time visibility into storage capacity. We're seeing a lot of customers miss out in visibility when a lot of their racking gets full, misusing of warehouse space. So in really high turn, high velocity, high fulfillment operations, not having a good sense of what your storage capacity looks like as it's changing can be super problematic.
Mm-hmm. Well, the warehouse itself, it's this discrete structure with four walls. And I'd imagine that it's taken by itself alone, figuring out what's inside may not be that big a challenge, but linking that to to a larger network and knowing what you have across a whole network of warehouses, that must be much more difficult to achieve today. How good a job are supply chains doing in that respect?
Yeah, I think when you look at how companies are viewing warehouse operations as they happen or what's in the warehouse, I think it's the most challenged aspect of really supply chain visibility. The warehouses generate, through their processes and the complex technology that runs them, they generate so many more times the quantity of data compared to other areas of supply chain. Right? We've benchmarked and we think that the warehouse might generate 50 to 100 times the data volume that a transportation network does. Mm-hmm. So supply chain has, I think, gotten very good at looking at data in their planning systems, very good in transportation with the new real-time transportation visibility platforms. But the fastest moving micro area of supply chain, really all these constantly running operations in the warehouse, because of the data volumes it generates, is so difficult for people to see what's going on. You asked across the networks. I haven't seen many companies, if any, that are doing a good job of seeing what's going on as it's happening across their network, let alone in one warehouse, honestly. So, I mean, what I think companies should do is, as the warehouse is the most difficult part to see what's going on as it occurs, is look at technologies that not only accomplish that, but stretch back across the entire supply chain upstream. And I don't see anybody doing that.
So they need to make better use of the data they have. It's not a problem with a lack of data, right? It's just that the data is there, but not being used to its maximum impact. How is that going to be done? Is that a tech play? Is that automation, analytics, artificial intelligence? What's going to make it possible to make real use of that data?
That's a great question, and I think it's one that's sometimes missed in supply chain because I believe we have a different answer than a lot of other folks. So there's fantastic technology that runs the supply chain, the planning solutions, TMS, WMS, a lot of the robotics and AI that are now coming into the fold. They do a phenomenal job of running the supply chain. So how do I optimize the streams of data and make decisions so that we can make and move product? That's very different than getting your arms around the data sets that are generated by those systems. Mm-hmm. So the databases that run those systems are, traditionally relational databases. So they process and store data in very different ways than just call newer types of databases that are less structured in how they manage data. So a NoSQL database allows you to process thousands of times more data than a traditional relational database. So every supply chain system is written with those database structures and technologies. Our view is that in order to optimize the use of the huge data sets generated, you really need to look at new database technology and the ability to synthesize and use all of that data. So I think that I think the answer to your question, Bob, is that it's really going to be a technology play, but we have to leverage new types of technology that are designed to process huge data sets.
I wonder, though, as warehouses become more automated and begin to make heavier use of robotics to ferry stuff around and move things around the warehouse, does that not naturally create a rich source of data just automatically that makes it easier to access? I mean, it doesn't that come with the system in a way?
Actually, the data is easy to access. You can always access the data. Those systems, those robotic systems, those are actually generating a significant amount of data. Right. So the location of the bot, pics of the bot, even if it's cobots or full automation, whatever it is, those systems that run those pieces of technology or bots, those are constantly generating data, just like a WMS is. So the WMS might be pushing the order information into the robotic system. The robotic system makes a decision and guides the robot to do whatever it needs to do in the warehouse and generates all of that data. So those are different sources of data generation, which is different than how do you manage the data set. So we're having active conversations with multiple robotic firms that are trying to get their arms around their data, and they're using, just call it traditional methods. But after you build up so much data, call it 30 days or 60 days, it really slows down in how you can do really good historical analysis over 6 months, a year, 2 years worth of data, which allows you to then really optimize future assignments, because now you're going back and historically looking at data, and then you can apply concepts such as machine learning, dynamic process tasking for the systems. So those are systems that generate a lot of information and data that you still need to get your arms around.
Meanwhile, as you indicated at the beginning of the discussion, the very definition of a warehouse is changing with regard to where it's located, how big it is, what type of product it moves, how fast things go through the warehouse. That's just got to complicate the situation even more. Does that make it easier because these are newer facilities to automatically sign on to systems that allow for these capabilities, or does it make it more complex because there are so many more different types of warehouses out there that you have to have control of?
Yeah, it makes it more complex, definitely, because you see different size warehouses, different configurations of warehouses. As we're thinking more about smaller pop-up warehouses, particularly in the world of e-com, you're going to want to have sort of an out-of-the-box technology, just call it package, to stand that up. You might be more nimble in where those locations are. We're seeing manufacturers open up extra capacity in their warehouses as sort of a pseudo 3PL. So how do you manage that different type of process in the exact same location? Yeah. So all of those different nuances, Bob, as people try to become more flexible, get more out of the existing or new warehouses, just add complexity to it.
Yeah. When a gigantic container ship blocks the Suez Canal, it certainly does make headlines. We know all about it, but we don't pay as much attention to what goes on inside the four walls of a warehouse. I think we maybe take for granted the fact that these gigantic warehouses are complete efficient machines that turn this stuff out easily. Perhaps we should pay more attention. Do you think that warehouses don't get enough attention in that respect, as opposed to giant ships out there blocking canals?
I do, and I might have a unique perspective in that because I used to run global transportation for a very large manufacturing company, and I got into warehouse technology sort of after transportation. So transportation is much more visible. It's easier to see. It's easier to report against. And candidly, like I said, the data generated is smaller, so it's easier to get your arms around transportation data. But the amount of engineering and technology and just hyper efficiency in a warehouse is staggering. There are so many technologies, so many moving pieces, so much complexity in that box that I just think most people, it's a black box to most people. They don't really have a good appreciation for the amount of technology and amount of engineering in a warehouse. So yeah, I don't think it really gets the attention it deserves for the complexity, sophistication of operation that it is. Doesn't mean there's not optimization. There's tons of optimization opportunity, but yeah, they're pretty impressive operations, whether they're manual all the way to fully automated and lights out. But yes, short answer, yes, they don't get the appreciation they deserve.
A great argument for paying more attention to what goes on inside this black box called a warehouse. Alex Wakefield of Longbow Advantage, thank you very much for sharing with us your insights and helping us to understand just how complex this issue is. Thank you very much for taking the time with me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.